Hello all, and welcome to Bubbler Banter on the Brews Sports Network. I'm Josh Scheibe, and I'm here with Ian DeMars. Ian, how have you been this week?
I've been doing pretty well, Josh. I heard you had a little rough week.
I did. I fractured my tailbone on Sunday.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I didn't do so well in the Brews Sports Combine.
Well, at least you're here today.
That's
so
right. Yes, I am.
You will not be missing any time.
I will be sitting for the whole show, so we'll see how this goes. Well, what a week for Wisconsin sports, though. There's just so much to talk about here. Let's start with the sizzling Bucks. Spencer Hawes, the 7-1 veteran, finally got some time on the court.
Yes.
Win against the Toronto Raptors.
The Needle, as they're calling him now.
Yes.
Finally got to see the action on Saturday against the Raptors. The Bucks, they were struggling to start the game. I think they only had 12 points in the first quarter.
Yeah.
They're like, let's bring in Spencer Hawes. Didn't play the first 11 games, and you want to know what? He was the big spark for them. He finished with, I think it was 16 points,
Something
8
like
rebounds,
that, yeah.
and I don't think he missed a shot till the fourth quarter.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
It was an incredible game for him.
He was just
first game.
Yeah, just draining threes, grabbing rebounds. He had a really good and one play in that second quarter. I believe it was like 10 or 12 points in that second quarter.
Yeah.
He was definitely lighting it up for the Bucks and gave them that momentum to get that win against Toronto. And look at them now. They've won 4 in a row.
And Malcolm Brogdon is very clearly in the running for Rookie of the Year this year. This could be big for the Bucks. Their only Rookie of the Year was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the 69-70 season, and that was only the second year of the team's existence. Mm-hmm. So what do you think are his chances?
I think his chances are pretty good. I mean, the question is, are people going to give it to Embiid? He's had a great year, but he's only played 31, 32 games. Is that really the type of numbers you want to have for a Rookie of the Year, or do you want to give it to a guy like Brogdon, someone people really weren't expecting to play that well, or even Dario Saric for Philadelphia? He's also had a great year, but honestly, just from what I was expecting this year, I'd probably have to give the edge right now to Brogdon, just because he's played great off the bench, and he's also played really well when he's been in that starting lineup for the Bucks. And just look at him right now, 4 wins in a row, and they're only half game out of that 8th spot.
And some people have suggested that it's not an actual rule in terms of Rookie of the Year honors, but the question becomes: do you have to play at least a season, or at least half the season, in order to really be considered?
I mean, that is kind of a tough question, because people are saying Jabari Parker could win Most Improved Player of the Year, and he's only played, 50 games? Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, that's more than half this season, but do you have to factor in the injury when you consider some of these votes for awards?
Right. And let's see here. And Terrence Jones is now a member of the team. What do you think of that?
I think that's a pretty good signing for the Bucks.
Yeah.
They definitely needed to fill someone in that 4 spots with Jabari going down. I mean, if you look at Spencer Hawes, it took him 11 games for him to see action. I don't think it'll take necessarily that long for Hawes to get that action, but I do feel like he will have a chance to get some opportunities. Maybe not this weekend, but once that Western Conference road trip starts next week, he'll definitely be someone to look out for on the Bucks.
It's interesting. I've heard a couple comments in the past week from some people that I know who are saying that Jason Kidd might be a big part of the problem, that it might be coaching staff. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that? Because there's always What do you think out there? If you want to comment on the video, please tell us your thoughts on this, because I've heard this comment a few times now, is that Jason Kidd may be the problem, because there's a lot of talent on this team. There's a lot of talent on this team, and talent wins games, but teams win more.
Yeah, and I feel like the issue, it's not that Kidd's he's inconsistent with his rotations. There'll be games where earlier on in the year, he was playing both Malcolm Brogdon and Beasley right away off the bench, and then there'll be games where Beasley doesn't even play, or games where you see Teletovic play 20 minutes, and then he'll go stretch where he doesn't play for 5 minutes or 5 games in a row. Right. I mean, it's definitely inconsistent. I mean, I know the Bucks, they really haven't been one of the best teams in the league this year. They're playing close to 5. They've been playing 500 basketball basically the whole season. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely something that's definitely played a factor for them. But honestly, if you think about it, you do have to look at the fact that since they are playing inconsistent, they really haven't been able to find that rotation. I'm thinking that's the issue with the Bucks.
Yeah, I would say they're doing their best to figure out a more standard rotation.
Yeah.
But just because of like you said, the inconsistency of the play of the games that they've been playing, it's difficult to find a standard rotation.
I mean, let's look at their center position. I mean, you had Miles Plumlee, who's not even on the team anymore, starting the year at center. Then you had John Henson moving to starting center. Then you had Plumlee going back to center. Then he gets traded. You put Henson back at center. Now Thon Maker's starting at center, and he wasn't even playing the first half of the year. So it's definitely interesting what Kidd has done. I mean, when I looked at Thon coming into this season, I figured he was going to get the same treatment Giannis got his rookie year, where he wasn't going to play that first half of the year, but he was going to see his minutes increase towards the second half of the season and earn more playing time. Yes, that was the year the Bucks didn't play that well, and they ended up getting the second pick, but I figured that was the way they're going to treat Thon, just like they did with Giannis.
And, it seems like there's one player that stands out, one player per game that really stands out and brings something new each week. I'm seeing a different feature online on a particular player. And that's actually something that really fascinates me about this team. In the NBA, one of the big problems that I have with it is that it's all about the individual players as opposed to team play. When I played basketball, which admittedly was a long time ago, but it's always been more interesting to me to see teams playing as opposed to individuals trying to pretend to be a team, And even if it's just a matter of the other teammates passing the ball to one person, that's still team play. Yeah,
and that's definitely the point of basketball. It is really a team sport. I mean, yes, Giannis has been by far our best player, was our only All-Star this year, but it's not. You can't just win without him. I mean, I remember they were playing San Antonio earlier in the year, and he was sick. He didn't even play that much. He didn't score that game. And look at who stepped up that game. Michael Beasley. He had probably his best game of the season during that game, and they ended up winning that game. So it's definitely something to keep in mind that it's not just Giannis that's showing that the Bucks are playing this well. It's definitely the whole team.
Well, moving right along, let's move into our next segment. We've got a special guest joining us here today. It is Bill Schmid. He's here. He was here this morning on the Morning Brew, and we're very glad to have him here. It's going to be a good conversation, I think. He knows a lot about the Packers. He knows a lot about the Brewers, and so that's why we have him here. I'm excited to see what this conversation is going to be about. I think it's going to be a good one.
So what is the first conversation we will be talking about?
Well, the first conversation is going to be about it's called Cheeseheads Wanted, and we're joined here in the studio by Bill Schmid. Bill, welcome to the show. Can you tell us and the listeners a little bit about yourself before we go into this?
I am from Carroll University, born and raised in Milwaukee. Went to Whitnall, school in Hales Corners. Work at 105.7 The Fan in Milwaukee, also on 12:50 a.m. if anyone knows. Anything else about me you guys want to know? I mean, I'm ready to get drilled. Like whatever
you played at Carroll. You played at Carroll, correct?
I played at Carroll. Yes, played line.
Okay. Good offensive line.
Now you're one of us too, right?
Yes. Us O linemen got to stay together.
He's gonna get double teamed on over here. We're going to do a tone blocking drill.
Well, we're glad to have you here, Bill. The NFL Combine wrapped up this week, but perhaps the biggest news of the week out of Green Bay is that Julius Peppers intends to play another season, whether or not it's with the Pack. And as of today, he's a free agent. Any thoughts on that, Bill?
I'd love to see Pep back as a Packer. I think he brought a veteran voice that I think a lot of people talk about that's not really there on this team. Mentions how the team is always one of the youngest in the league. There's nothing wrong with bringing a guy in that's going to play, 35, 40% of the snaps if you're going to pay him something less than what he was making last year. I think last year it was right around the $12 million number. You bring him back for a $5 million number, and he's going to play have the same snap limitations that he had. I think it would be a really, really strong pickup for them.
Yeah, and if you think about it, he's been consistent in his first couple of years with the Packers.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a lot of people look for the splash plays. I know that's a hot button word that a lot of people like, making sure that your impact plays is what a lot of people talk about. He had 7.5 sacks last season. For a guy that's playing the amount of snaps that he was, I think that's a pretty good number of where he's going to be at.
Yeah, I mean, he had 25 sacks over his 3 years in Green Bay, and he's, I think, 5th now on the list in terms of all-time sacks.
One of the only players, there's a club of interceptions, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, and sacks that he's in. That's a very exclusive number. He also, I think he scored like 2 or 3 touchdowns in 3 years that he was with the Packers. I mean, I remember the very the one against the Vikings on Thursday Night Football where he took it about 60 yards or something like that.
Right.
So I mean, you still see that kind of freakish athleticism that people talk about with Pep, able to range around and be as explosive as he is still at his old age.
Right.
You look at a guy who's 37, 38 years old and he still scares
25-year-old dudes that are pretty big themselves.
He probably scares both of us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, he definitely scares me. Well, and it's interesting, though, the fact that it is such a big deal for him to be playing another season, his 16th season, it might indicate that he's kind of finally getting to the point in his career where it's season by season, 1-year contracts like we see with a lot of veteran players. It might be that for the foreseeable future. Do you think, I know obviously you guys are big fans, as am I, but do you think it might be wiser in the long run for the Packers to focus on maybe trying to train up a younger player?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, that is tough.
Because I think there's a lot of talent when you look at like Kyler Fackrell is a guy that I think is immensely talented. I think he's going to be a really good football player for the Packers. There's a difference between what you can do with a young guy, throwing him into the fire in the NFL, and I mean Ian can attest to this too. When you're jumping to a new level, playing a rookie, 65-70% of the snaps, that's a huge jump.
Sure.
And understandably so, you want to continue to move those guys in the development curve that we always talk about is getting snaps, getting reps. Yeah. I don't know how bringing Pep as one of your 53 is a bad idea. I think you have 53 roster spots, and not everyone starts. Not everyone plays every game. I think that he's a guy that on the roster, he provides a lot to the team, and I think that he provides a lot to the fan base as well. I think a lot of people he's become a fan favorite around Green Bay, whether you like it or not, and he's brought a lot of people together onto the state.
Well, anybody who has seen the Packers play recently knows that it's a bit of an understatement to say that they're hurting a bit on the defensive side as well as at the running back position. Ian, any interesting prospects from your perspective out of the combine?
One that I know that a lot of people have been talking about is obviously Christian McCaffrey from Stanford.
Absolutely.
I feel like the Packers, I don't know if they have to go running back with their first pick. I feel like if McCaffrey's there, you obviously should try and go for him. I know they have issues on defense, but I feel like he's definitely the guy you have to look at. If not getting your first pick, hopefully maybe your second pick if he's still on the board.
And, we talked about it, all week on the program, on the big show, on The Fan, where it's hard to gauge where, you look at this Packer roster, you're a lot closer to being one of those dominant offenses, one of those, groundbreaking offenses, to being a legitimate defense, a top 15, top 10 defense. You bring in Christian McCaffrey, man, that changes a lot of what you can do on offense. And you got 5 guys at any point on the time, any spot on the field, you got 5 guys that can take it to the crib. If you got Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb at times, Jordy Nelson at times, Jared Cook at times when he's working in space, and then you put McCaffrey out of the backfield. And a shotgun
he's
set,
got those
that's hard.
Stanford ties with Montgomery on the team, too.
And we've seen now, what is it, like the last 5 years, Ted likes those dudes from the West Coast.
Oh, yeah.
Well, 2 or 3 top.
McCaffrey's brother on the team?
Ed McCaffrey's on the team, yeah. He's their older brother. He actually got brought onto the active roster before that NFC Championship game.
Okay.
But, he's drafted Montgomery, Blake Martinez, both in the last couple of years from Stanford. I think it's a testament to what Shaw does, Coach Shaw does out there at Stanford. He develops great football players and, like you said, really smart football players.
Oh, it looks like we have a question from Baxter. Former kicker, he wants to know how long does Mason Crosby have left?
Ooh, good question.
He said, hashtag kickers forever.
Well, you see Mason Crosby strike the football there in Dallas. It's hard to think that he doesn't have a lot of leg left.
No kidding.
I mean, you do have to look at him, though. He is starting to gray out a little bit, looking at the facial hair. And
that's true. See, I don't know what the shelf life for kickers are. I mean, I never played it, so that's a lie. I did kick in like 5th and 6th grade.
Those were the days when big guys
you could just toe bomb it, and they always just put the biggest dude out there.
Yeah, it is an interesting question because he's been. Wow, what season is he on?
Gosh, he's got to be in.
I remember, I think it was Brett Favre's final season was his first season.
It was his first, so this would be his 10th year.
Right, yeah. So what do you guys think out there? How long does Mason Crosby possibly have as a Packer? Or how long do you think that we should stick with Julius, or the Packers should stick with Julius Peppers in the upcoming season, try to negotiate even just a one-year contract? Do you have any ideas about people coming out of the Combine? What do you think about Christian McCaffrey or any others? Comment in the comment section below, and we'll try to bring them into the show as we can. We are getting a couple of comments here. Oh, boy. Janikowski is bald, LOL. Hair is not everything, says Baxter. So he's got a point. Hair is not everything.
He does have a point.
You know, when you're talking about kickers, it's the leg that matters, right?
Yeah. Janikowski might be the GOAT, though, man. That dude is legendary. Any point in time, that guy's going to try to put it through.
Yeah, that guy is definitely one of my favorite kickers.
Now, one guy you were talking about the Combine that I would want to ask you two about. What's the sentiment on J.J. Watt, or T.J. Watt, I should say? J.J. Watt's little brother. We get a lot of talk. A lot of people like him. I think it's got to have something to do with
I know.
Wisconsin,
we talked about it last week on our show. I felt like that's definitely a good fit for the Packers, not just because he's from Wisconsin, but because I feel like they need to start growing that outside linebacker position.
And growing some speed out there. That kid's athletic.
I mean, you look at if they do bring back Peppers, older guy, probably doesn't have that much time left. And also with the fact that, if no one knows, Nick Perry just did agree to come back to the Packers.
And if you're thinking about it this way, you know, he's used to the cold. You know, well, if you're drafting from the coast, it is a completely different kind of play, as opposed to coming to Wisconsin and trying to play here in pretty harsh conditions.
Right. Yeah.
I know Montgomery talked about it before the playoff game. He said, "Man, cold's cold. I don't know. I don't like playing it. I'd rather play in 65. But I mean, it's not going to matter. I'm going to still play. But
right.
There's an absolute difference to being used to those kind of climates."
Well, anybody else that you think might be a good fit?
A couple other fits that I would see. I think Jabril Peppers. I think you can fit him into anywhere. He moves Morgan Burnett, I think, back in the secondary a little bit more. Allows you to play a little bit more too high looks, which can be very, very helpful for the team. And we're seeing on the screen right now some highlights of JJ or TJ. I keep saying that. I guess he just reminds me of JJ, a dude that just kind of worked his tail off. And coming out of the Woodland Conference, respect, as we don't usually have a lot of guys go pro, but TJ Watt was one of those dudes that when you were younger, you saw his frame and you knew that he was something special. I think the motor that he shows is something that gets people excited as well. Something that you hear a lot of, especially at the DN position. Guys with motors are able to continue to make plays. Yeah,
and if you look at Jabril Peppers, even if he doesn't find a spot right away on that defense, he is a dynamic returner on either kick or punts.
He's a Pro Bowl special teams guy at worst. So I think when you look at that, when you're looking at guys to get in the first round, you're trying to find talented players that can plug in right away, even if it's not, like we were saying, percentage parts of the snaps, 60% of your defensive snaps. If he's playing all your special team snaps, you're getting something out of him.
Ooh, it looks like Greg commented, will Green Bay pick up Corey Clement in the draft?
Interesting situation. I think Corey's a little bit more of a downhill style runner. Not necessarily what the Packers like to do, but he's definitely talented. He's got a lot of tread still on the tires. Missed a lot of games at Wisconsin for injury's sake, but those are also carries that he still has on his body. So I think that he's going to find a place. I don't know if he will necessarily be drafted up. I could definitely see him being a street guy that comes the next couple days after the draft. Same with Agumba Wale. I think both of them are going to be guys that are going to be day 3 at best. I don't see Clement going in the 3rd or 4th round, but I could see him, a team like Carolina, more of a power running game.
Yeah.
You look at guys like the teams like the Jets. The Browns are a team that likes to pound the football.
I mean, the Browns do need to fill a lot of spots.
There's a lot of different places where we're playing, running the ball in a downhill style is what the team wants to do, and I think that's where he's going to fit in a little bit more.
Yeah.
All right, well, if you have any other comments, you can still add them throughout the show, but we are going to move on to our next segment here. Bill's going to stick around with us. This one is about Brews in the desert. It's spring training in Arizona, and the Brewers had a couple of exciting wins in the past few days, one against the White Sox and one against the Dodgers. Bill, obviously it's still early, but do you think Brewers fans could hope to see more games like this moving forward?
Definitely. I think the team's trending in the right direction. We talked about it here on the morning show, and we talk about it every day. You can tune in on the Fans Baseball postgame show. Tim Allen, Sparky, myself are on there after every game. And, it's kind of the trend that we talk about each and every night. There's going to be ebbs and flows in the season, and you're going to see guys play a lot better. What you wanted to see yesterday was what you saw in Josh Hader get 2 innings where he was virtually unhittable. And the game wasn't on TV, so it was tough for people to gauge. A lot of times, that's a big thing that FSN is able to do now, being able to cover some of those spring training games and get a look at a lot of these different guys.
It's also tough when they do split squad games because
you
have to choose between one of the games.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was what was interesting about yesterday, being in that split squad action. I didn't even get to actually see the lineups on which side who was playing in each different games at the positions, but there are different races that I think are the big things you want to look at this year. Who's going to play center field? Keon Broxton, Craig Counsell has talked about, is a special player.
And he has so much potential, but you look at last year.
A lot of potential, and a lot of teams, Craig said a couple weeks ago that he's had a lot of different coaches come up to him and say, dude, that Keon Broxton kid is something special if he figures it out. Yeah. And, you look at the development of Orlando Arcia, but you also look at guys changing positions like Jonathan Villar. How's he going to fit in at second base? Right. You can't necessarily count on him getting 60-plus stolen bases like he did last year. But the number one position I think that is the hot button to watch and where they can continue to improve is at catcher.
Yeah. We do have an interesting question here from Greg on Facebook. What seems more irrelevant at this point, spring training or the World Baseball Classic?
I'd say spring training. I kind of like the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah, I like it too, just because it's one of those things that only comes around every few years.
Right.
But there's been no games on TV so far, so you can't really see any of the action.
Yeah, on the MLB Network, I know they've got some of the games. But I'm never going to be upset when Venezuela's playing Israel and there's an opportunity for a little bit of good banter. I think it's awesome. I think it's cool being able to get – and, you look at the Israel team just because they were in the news.
Yeah, they're surprising everyone.
I don't know if you guys heard what they're calling themselves. I'm not going to say it on the air because I don't know exactly what our laws are, but they're having some fun with themselves, and I think that I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. I think it's a cool situation. It takes guys away from their teams for 2-3 weeks. But it's not like they're sitting on the couch playing video games. They're playing baseball. They're getting at bats. I mean, there's a difference between taking guys out and, they're hanging out and lifting. But they're playing baseball and playing competitive ball, too.
Looking at Jeff asked us a question. Who's going to be the Brewers' closer at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year?
Wow.
Because that is kind of tough if you think about it.
That's a tough one.
Trading their closer last year and then trading who would have been their closer.
And Thornburg, yep. I would say Neftali Felice is going to get the first look at it. He's the favorite right now. I don't think he finishes the year with the team, especially if he starts out hot.
You think they might try to move him?
He would be a guy that you'd want to move at the deadline, especially because you guys know bullpen arms at the deadline are obviously always a hot commodity.
Oh, yeah.
Because games shorten in the playoffs. Pitchers are going 4 innings. If you're in trouble, you're out. So I think that Felice probably gets the start in the closer role for the team.
Is it one of those where...
I would like to see...
Would you say it's one of those where he begins it at the beginning of the year, but where their season goes if they want to try and get a young guy in there?
Right. Okay. Right. I think that there's possibilities for different dudes to jump up in there. Michael Blazek is a guy that has an opportunity, I think, to get up in there. We saw Corey Knebel take some steps last year. The bullpen is going to get rounded out here sooner rather than later. The one interesting name that want to see how they use him and if he makes the team is Jabba Chamberlain. I think a lot of the guys on the team have really taken a liking to him.
Yeah, and he's performed well earlier on in his career. It's been these last few years where he's just been inconsistent, hasn't really done that much.
Yeah, and he's a guy that's gotten outs in big games. He's pitched in the playoffs multiple times. He's had a long career, 8-9 year career. That's something that you can't take away from a guy. And being able to get outs at the major league level is something that I think that he can really mentor these guys in. That there's a difference between getting AAA outs and a difference from getting major league outs.
Oh, yeah. Now, moving back to the catcher, who do you think is going to be their catcher to begin the year?
We talked to Andrew Susek at Brewers on Deck, and I was really happy with what he said. I think that he's a really, really good ball player, blocked by Buster Posey out there in San Francisco for so many years. There's something to say about learning from the best catcher in baseball. And I don't know about you guys around the table. I think we can safely say that that's Buster Posey.
Yeah.
And Susek was a second-round pick. Hasn't, like we said, necessarily gotten the opportunity to start, hasn't gotten the opportunity to be the number one guy. So I think that it opens up a chance for him to jump in there. But I do think Jet Bandy's probably their top selection right now. David Stearns talked about it a lot once they got him for Maldonado from the Angels, that he was who they thought could be their number one and who they thought could play every day. And he fits the bill if you look at him. He's 6'4". He looks like he could play the middle infield. He looks like he can play outfield. He just looks like a good ball player. And his arm strength is really good. He got a couple of runners out in his first start, 2 in the first inning. I believe they were playing the Dodgers. So it comes down, I'd say, Bandy and Susek. I would rather give the nod to Susek just because I think that the upside is a little bit untapped with him.
Well, Ian, what do you think of the Brewers front office? They're under a lot of pressure to make this team work.
Yeah, they're definitely on the spot this year, but you do have to look at the fact that Craig Counsell just did finish his first year, and it was, if you look at it, they didn't do that well, but they did better than people thought.
73 wins was a good
I thought they were going to lose
team.
over 100 games last year. And I was like, they're for sure going to trade LaCroix. I thought they were going to for sure trade Braun. But, I mean, for them to do that well last year is definitely something to look forward to for the future. Is it going to pan out this year? No, I don't think so. I feel like they might do better this year, but like I said last week, they're about, I'd say, at least 1 year away from contending in the playoff hunt.
I would almost say about 2 or 3. I think that's when you see Craig Counsell get a 3-year extension after a season where, they were obviously not playoff contention worthy, but 73 wins for the team that he was given. And I think a lot of it's the second half push that they made. They didn't fold after LaCroix was gone.
Yeah.
They continued to play good baseball. They continued to play strong day in and day out.
It looks like Baxter commented, what's an acceptable finish for the Brewers this year?
I was just going to say, I think 73 wins is another great number. Obviously, you want to see improvement. You'd like to see 75, 76.
It's also hard to improve when you're in their division.
It's also hard to improve when you got 16, 17 games against the reigning world champions. You got 16, 17 games against the Cardinals and Pirates who, 2 years ago won 90-some wins.
Yeah.
So there's great talent in the NL Central, excuse me. Where the Brewers slate in that, I think they're above the Reds, which is saying something because that organization is just god-awful. There's room for improvement. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a step back or a little regression. 68 wins, I think, is kind of the lowest mark that I would be happy with. But as long as you're seeing improvement from, Keon Broxton, the guys like we said, Jonathan Villar playing a good second base, I don't think you can be upset.
One last thing I want to ask you. I had a friend last summer tell me that the Brewers in 5 years are going to be what the Cubs were last year.
Okay.
Do you think that's a possibility, or?
I want to say yes.
It's always a possibility, right?
Yeah, I'd want to say yes because I think that's one of the best core groups that I've seen in my short lifetime. You look back at the dynasty of the Yankees in that early 2000s run that they had, when Jeter was young. That's kind of what you're slating down there in Wrigleyville. It's hard to say, but when you look at Rizzo and Bryant as the 2, 3, or 3, 4, wherever Joe Madden puts them in and day out, when you surround them with guys like Baez, Russell, and Zobrist, Hayward, there's so many bats in that lineup.
Yeah, and if you look,
and they have the ability to spend $180 million in their new TV deal and go get John Lester. That's just something that the Brewers aren't going to be able to do.
Right.
So I think to put it that they will be the Chicago Cubs, who have the opportunity to be one of the premier dynasties, I think, in baseball history, is tough to say. Do I think that they're competing for NL Central division titles, CS champ appearances, World Series appearances? I think they can in 5 years, though.
Well, Greg on Facebook asks, do you guys see the Cubs as a different team this year from what they were last year?
I mean, they did really well last year. I mean, winning a World Series, but it's going to be hard to put up those numbers again, in my opinion. I feel like they're obviously going to play well this year. I feel like they will be in the playoffs this year, but I feel like they aren't going to win as many games this year.
It is always tough, not only managing but meeting expectations in the year after
especially in a
win.
top 3 media market like Chicago.
Right.
I think, their bullpen is obviously a little bit depleted of what you saw in the playoffs,
Right.
but man, like I said, I think that Cubs roster is something special. I think it's one that you see every couple decades. It's going to be hard for me not to see them in the World Series. It's going to be hard to watch them in the World Series, obviously. But it's hard to pick against a team that's, like I said, and you had Schwarber back for, you would think, the whole season, as long as he doesn't have an injury in spring training like he did last year. I mean, you had a guy that can hit 290 and 35, 40
look at
home
what he
runs.
did in the World Series was still kind of a bad knee.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was, 6 months off surgery?
Yeah, he had a double in his second at bat.
That's an unprecedented recovery time for a guy. I mean, obviously he's playing baseball. He's not Adrian Peterson, trying to run for 1,800 yards.
Right.
But having a guy like Schwarber back in your lineup, I think it only improves your team.
So going back to the Packers for a second, Baxter asks on Facebook, what do you make of the Packers raising their ticket prices?
I think it's kind of the growth of the league. It continues to continues.
I mean, it's
to
hard
grow.
where you see either team stay at their same ticket prices or even drop ticket prices. They're usually always going up.
Now, does that mean that Ted's got to go sign some free agents if we're paying $7 more for a ticket?
It's been rumored that he's going to go big in free agency the past couple of years. Is this going to be the year? I don't think so.
Well, like I told him on the
not,
morning show,
right.
I was a little late because I went to go wake him up. He was hanging out in the hot tub. But, hey, as long as they don't raise beer prices, I'm fine.
Well, what month is it? What month is it, guys?
March.
It's March already? That's madness.
Oh,
wait, that's
there we
right.
go.
It's conference tourney time, folks. And for our next segment, College Vacation, that's what we're going to be talking about. What a week it has been for our local colleges, guys. The 10th seeded UW Milwaukee Panthers came out of nowhere last week and wound up just a few baskets away from winning the Horizon League championship against Northern Kentucky.
And you look at their bracket, the bracket for that tournament, it was kind of a tough bracket for them. I mean, you look at the first game, they dominated against Detroit. Then they have to go against one of the best teams in that conference in Valparaiso. And they won the game scoring only 43 points. Like, that's a bad offensive night. But to win a game, that means your defense had to have been that stellar. And then they do well against Illinois Chicago, and they almost pulled it off against Northern Kentucky. And congrats to them because it was their first year, I think, NCAA tournament eligible.
Was it really?
The Norse just, I think they were a D1 program for 4 years. I think they said, and like you said, it was their first time being tournament eligible. What Coach Jordan has done with those guys over there is really nothing short of spectacular. When you have a 4-14 regular season, then get your guys ready to go into the conference tournament. And, I mean, I think the most impressive one was the first game, winning by 25.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a sizable win, obviously. And then you go in, like you said, against Valparaiso, one of the top teams in that conference, and defensively hold them to 41 points. The defensive pressure that the Golden Eagles were playing all tournament long was really impressive. So I think that's a good foundation for that program to build on. I would like to say that I see more than 4 conference wins next year for the Panthers. But
they would have been the first team in NCAA history to make it with 20 losses, and they would have beat that handily. They would have had 23 losses going into the
they
tournament.
had 8 wins going into the conference tournament, and then you get 3 in 3 days.
Yeah.
Well, and it does bring up an interesting question of, if does this invalidate the rest of the season if all the teams are going to the conference tournaments? Does that mean that the rest of the season is pretty much moot? It doesn't matter whether you win? What do you guys think?
I wouldn't really say that it's all about the conference tournament because you have to grow throughout the season before you hit the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like every team does have to do that. And you look at UWM, for example. I mean, not the best season, but they knew, like, hey, we're going to shock some people in this tournament. We're ready for this tournament. And that's exactly what they did when they upset Valparaiso and made it to the championship game. So I definitely feel like you have to grow into the season before you're ready for the postseason.
And we have seen teams pretty much change completely once tournament season comes around. So this kind of opens up the possibilities for more Cinderella stories, as it were, or it gives teams a chance that might not have had a chance if it were just the top 6 teams.
Yeah.
Going to the tournaments.
And there have been different situations, not even just we look at this year, but maybe like 8 years back, Syracuse made a really big run in the Big East tournament. They were like the 11th seed. I think what the conference tournament allows is, like you said, grow throughout the season, but the adjustments you make within the 16-hour, 18-hour window of when you find out who you're going to play is a huge advantage.
Let's also remember what UConn did with Kemba Walker a few years ago when they won, I believe it was like 6 games in 6 nights.
6 games in 6 nights. Same thing that Syracuse team did. And, it's great players win in March.
Yeah.
And great defense wins in March.
Exactly. And look what happened with UConn that year. They did win the national championship.
They win the national championship. And there's so many different times, too, where, like we said, like I was bringing up with Syracuse, that's a team that runs a 2-3 zone, and a lot of teams don't see a 2-3 zone all year. So when you're clumping in all these teams, 68 teams to the major field, it allows for, I'm going to go super cliche and say the madness here. But
it is March. You're okay.
But it opens the door. It's one of those things where that's why we watch. I don't necessarily. Spoiler: I don't love the NCAA tournament. I don't think it's how you crown a true champion.
Sure.
The NFL playoffs is one of those things that I also don't think crowns a total champion. You want to make the Super Bowl, find a real champion, you play a 3-game series. But you're just not going to do that. March Madness is too good. It's too much fun. And the more the merrier. I feel like if you start eliminating teams from the conference tournament, you kill half of, the storyline behind March Madness.
Yeah. Right, yeah. Well, also a big shout-out to the Marquette University women's basketball team because they won their first ever Big East Conference championship. Congratulations on an incredible accomplishment. Any comments on that, guys?
It was an impressive win. I mean, they did defeat a 17th-ranked DePaul team, which was having a really good season, and it's just something that is good for the city or for the Milwaukee area and for Wisconsin, seeing how Marquette was able to get that Big East Conference tournament title.
It's a cool feat. Now let's see if the men can do it in the men's tournament this week.
Speaking of them, how do you think their chances are looking at the tournament? They are, from what it looks like here, the 4th seed. So
they're a bubble team, I think, for the overall tournament. I think they're kind of in.
They do have
a growing sentiment that
they have a pretty good resume.
That they're going to be in. Like you said, they got a good resume. Wins against Creighton and Villanova, who both were top 10 at the time.
And they had a pretty good win against Xavier last week, who, if you look at it today, they might not even make the tournament, even though people thought they were going to be a Final Four team coming into the season.
Also closed the season winning 4 games. I think, you go into March and you go into your conference tournament winning games. The selection committee knows that. And the selection committee looks at who's playing the best basketball right now. Are they, if you match up Marquette and Villanova, in 10 straight games, Villanova wins 9 out of 10 times, probably 10 out of 10 times. They're a very, very good basketball team. But Marquette is an opportunity when you can shoot threes like they do.
Yeah.
And, they lead the conference in three-point percentage, and they're going to live and die by the jump shot. They got an opportunity to play with anybody in this conference tournament. So I think 1:30 today, I think, is the tip-off time against Seton Hall. And, it'll be fun to watch. I know Andrew Rousey, who you're seeing right now, Big East 6th Man of the Year, a guy that there's a lot of people on this team where, Marquette fans don't really remember getting as recruits because they weren't recruits. I think Wojciechowski's done a great job bringing in different names, different guys that he knows can play the game and play the game the right way.
So would you say that if they beat Seton Hall today, they're a lock to make the tournament?
I think you win one game in your conference tournament, you're in. Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you think of the Badgers' chances? What do you make of the last half of their season moving into the
As long as they don't have to shoot free throws, I think they're fine.
Yeah.
And then they, like I said last week, they have to give Ethan half the ball.
And he's got to be able to go up against those double teams, too.
Yeah.
That was once, I believe it was Northwestern was kind of the first team to kind of crack that mold on that Sunday night game where they came into Madison and just started doubling him, and he had no idea what he was doing.
Right.
He's going to know he's going to face double teams because he's the best player on that team. Nigel Hayes, good ball player. He's not the number one guy on that team. No. He never was the number one guy on a Badger team. He was a very, very good role player on a team that had 2 NBA, first-round picks.
Yeah.
I think Ethan Happ has the opportunity to grow into a guy that could maybe see himself at the next level, but he's a damn good college basketball player.
Do you see him with the season he's had going to the draft this year, or do you think he'll stay for 4 years?
I think he needs to stay.
Okay.
I don't think that he has like I said, I don't want to judge guys on their body types, but I don't think Ethan Happ necessarily has an NBA body. I don't think that he's
got to grow.
He's got to grow. He's got to fill himself out if he's going to be a post player. And guess what? He's got to learn how to deal double teams because you're going to see those in the NBA.
Well, and Happ and Hayes, I mean, they've had significant issues shooting from the free throw line.
I mean, look at Hayes a couple of weeks ago against Michigan State, 4 of 12 from the free throw line.
Happ was 1 of 7 against Iowa. And I mean
that probably
kind of cost them that game.
Yeah.
Because they had an opportunity to make it a 3 or 4 point game there when Happ went to the line and Bohannon knocks down the 3 and you lose by 2. So I think it's one of those teams where the Badgers know how to win in March. I think they've proven that the last 3 years. You fall in the conference tournament today, and I think you're looking at, 3 weeks ago before this slide happened, people were all upset because the Badgers weren't one of the top 16 teams listed out by the selection committee.
Yeah,
and now they might be a 7 or an 8 seed.
Yeah.
If you don't start knocking out free throws, that's where you're going to be.
All right, let's take a look at the Big Ten tournament bracket. So it looks like Wisconsin, they're the 2 seeds, so they receive a double bye. They're going to be versing the winner of Iowa, Indiana. Do you see them winning that first game?
Depends on who it's against. I think they'll beat Indiana, Iowa, a team that really runs up and down, gets out in front of you. Michigan State gave the Badgers trouble doing that, and obviously Iowa gave them trouble doing that a couple weeks or just a week ago. Ethan Happ says he wants to see the Hawkeyes. I believe the Badgers are going to get their first win. Like I said, I still believe the Badgers know how to win in March.
I feel like the big question is, do they need to win their conference tournament to get that confidence going into March Madness?
I don't think it hurts. I think it.
It can only help.
I think it can only help if they've lost.
Yeah, but look at Michigan State last year. They won the conference tournament. And they lost the first round.
They've lost 5 of 6 or 6 of 7 right now. I think you need at least one win to get yourself going into March. But like you said, teams have gone 6 straight games and won 6 straight in 6 days and gotten blown out by 20 on March. So I think there's a big difference between what happens this week and what happens next week. But if you're a Badger fan, you got to see a W to be feeling a little bit confident going into this next round.
Before we move on, where do you guys think that the Badgers will be seated in the tournament?
Ooh.
I think they're a 6 or a 7 right now.
I feel like if they win the conference tournament, they might get that edge to 5.
They could maybe get to a 5, yeah.
But 6 sounds
the
about
highest they would
6
go.
sounds about right.
But it goes to where do you want to be? Do you really want to be in one of those 5-12 matchups? Those dreaded 5-12 matchups that everyone's ripping their papers apart in science class over?
Like, no! Because those are the ones that definitely
always get you. They always screw you in March.
Well, Milwaukee is experiencing a wrestling takeover. WWE Fastlane was at the Bradley Center on Sunday, and the Extreme Midget Wrestling Federation was at the Turner Hall Ballroom last Friday. Ian and Bill, let's address the elephant in the room. Why do they call it WWE Fastlane?
Because you're on the fast lane to WrestleMania.
And it is just I believe it's just the Raw pay-per-view. No one from SmackDown's actually.
Yeah, it was a Raw.
I'm not very familiar with wrestling, I'll be frank.
Well, don't worry. I was actually at Fastlane.
Oh, you are?
I'm a subscriber to the WWE Network, a big wrestling fan. It's Fastlane for the idea, like I said, they're on the road to WrestleMania.
Sure.
WrestleMania in like 3.5 weeks. Overall, it was okay of a show. I was kind of just upset that I didn't know that this midget wrestling was at Turner Hall the night before, because I would have been there for sure.
Yeah, Josh, so you want to tell us a little bit more about?
Yeah,
Were you in attendance?
No, I wasn't there. I did do some research into midget wrestling, and it's actually kind of fascinating. It also made for some pretty interesting targeted ads this week. No, Amazon, I don't need steel-toed baby booties. I kid. But on a serious
Everyone
note,
needs a pair of those.
On a serious note, before anybody yells at us in the comments for not using the correct term, this is how they actually market themselves, as extreme midget wrestling.
Good disclaimer.
It's not.
And if you look at some of the stuff that you type in on Google, if you just click on one of the links, they'll be like, "Oh, we don't want to be called smaller midget. We want to be called extreme," which is
extreme midget wrestling.
Well, let's be fair. Extreme little person wrestling doesn't quite have
it
the
doesn't
same
have the
ring.
same ring,
Yeah.
man. You gotta
No
keep
pun
it with
intended. And like I said, this actually is kind of a fascinating sport, because you can trace it back, kind of its current iteration, back to the 50s and 60s, actually. And even farther back than that, you can almost look back into kind of the circus sideshows, based on what I was looking at. And what is so fascinating to me about this are the social aspects. You know, some people think that this is demeaning to the people who are doing the show, the people who are participating in the sport.
Just look at the video.
Look at the screen right now. That's a CM Punk lookalike.
But, you know,
rocking out. Oh, that is tremendous. Gets him with the roll up. There it is.
And if you looked at some of the video, like I was looking at some of the preview videos, it wasn't just the small people wrestling. They also, from what I saw, they were in a smaller ring. They even had a small person ref.
Well, and, you know, you kind of have to question, is this making fun of little people? Is this making fun of the midgets in the ring? But when you look at it, they really are athletic individuals.
Yeah, and if you look at if they're willing to do it, they obviously have a love for the sport.
Right.
They obviously don't. They're not too PC about it.
They're
not feeling
so
upset
worried
about it.
about it.
I don't think we should have to be upset about it. It's good, wholesome entertainment.
But going back to WWE, what did you think of Goldberg winning over Kevin Owens on Sunday?
I thought it was awesome. Like I said, I was there.
He became the second oldest champion ever.
Yeah. And to see him win, I'm a huge Kevin Owens fan. People, WWE fans, hit us in the comments section what you think of Kevin Owens. But I thought he was an awesome champion. I don't know how much you guys are into professional wrestling, like I said. But
I was pretty big into it in high school.
Right.
I've grown a little out of it
my
since,
grandpa
but
was a big fan,
I still
but
pay
I mean,
attention every once in a while.
He's a good heel champion. Him and Jericho had a really, really good storyline going. I think it was a needed transition. I think him and Jericho could have headlined WrestleMania and had the title for title. Jericho's the U.S. champion right now.
And from what I hear, I believe they are actually going at it at WrestleMania too.
Yeah, it'll be Owens and Jericho at WrestleMania. That still is on. I thought the match, I thought it had the heat to headline WrestleMania. I thought it could have went on last. Putting Goldberg and Lesnar in the main event is a little bit what everyone has been upset about with professional wrestling in the last 5 years. Ever since CM Punk made it so viral of bringing in part-timers to headline the biggest show of the year. Where you got your workhorses now in the first hour of the show when they could be headlining the show, and you got two guys on the wrong side of 40. Yeah. Going for the championship, who are on TV, 7 or 8 times. I think it's cool. I mean, that's what professional wrestling is. I tell people that all the time. In football, guess what? Bart Starr's never going to win another Super Bowl. Brett Favre never going to win another Super Bowl. But you know what? The Undertaker can win the WWE Championship. Right, yeah. I don't know what's wrong with that.
There doesn't seem to be an expiration date.
There's never an expiration date because it's professional wrestling.
And he did win 21 straight matches at WrestleMania, which is something you wouldn't expect, like someone to win 21 straight. And I believe he has 23 total wins, which is the most ever too.
And he had the crushing loss to Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania.
Oh yeah.
You ever watch that? Just go back and watch that match.
Yeah.
And just tear up.
You're just
you
like
just sit there and watch, and all your childhood dreams are just gone.
I remember. I'm like, I don't think he's ever. He could probably keep doing this till he's like 80 and never lose a match.
Right?
Yeah.
You just never thought it was going to end. It was like one of those 3 things you knew. You were gonna be born. You're going to pay taxes. Undertaker was going to win at WrestleMania.
Well, Greg brings up he brings up a question that always comes up when you talk about professional wrestling. Why do you guys talk about fake sports?
It's entertainment, man.
It is entertainment.
Greg, I'm going to tell you this right now. It's fun.
And those people, they are athletic. You
Yeah.
can't deny that. I mean, look at them, for one thing.
I think the one thing that I always ask people is, do you watch like Grey's Anatomy or Chicago PD? It's TV.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a TV show. It's not,
It's equivalent in the sports world kind of to superheroes.
Right,
Like
yeah,
you
it's-
dress up in spandex and you fight each other.
and you jump around, you hit each other in the face, maybe you grab a chair.
And yeah, some of it maybe.
Yeah, I
a
remember-
lot of
yeah.
it is staged.
Good, wholesome
Admittedly,
fun.
But it's
But it's fun. Yeah, I remember in high school I was Zack Ryder for Halloween one year.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Had the
He was-
shades, had the headband.
Were you wooing all over the place?
Yeah, I was like, woo, woo, you know it. I was playing his song. Went to the Halloween dance, played his song walking in. I was
That's
just feeling it.
tremendous. Wow, I wish I could pull off a Zack Ryder for Halloween.
And we do have another question here from Jeff. Is it all fake? Is everything scripted?
I don't know if it's all fake, because you do see wrestlers get injured, and I feel like it's hard to fake an injury.
I mean,
There's only so much you can
a
fake.
lot of the storylines are scripted.
Oh yeah, all that
that's
is
all scripted.
All that is scripted.
But what goes on in the ring, that's almost stage combat.
Yeah,
you
I feel
know?
like
Right.
some of it you can obviously tell, oh, he's not actually getting hit in the face, but you'll get some of these moves, like when they jump off the top, that's not fake. That's 100% real.
You're still catching a human being jumping off a ladder. I mean, if I'm going to take this microphone and hit Ian over the head with it, there's a
Right,
certain
that's
way
an
that I can
actual hit.
fake it that it looks cool on the camera that we have right here.
Right.
But that, maybe I didn't actually break his nose. So, I mean, it's staged combat, it's storylined, scripted TV, but, there's only so many ways you can hit a dude with a chair, and there's only so many ways it doesn't hurt.
And at one point, I think there was a method that they would use. They would actually have razor blades to use to kind of
just to get a little bit of fake blood.
Cut.
I mean,
or a
it's
little bit
better
of
than
blood
just
going.
putting a ketchup packet on your hand.
Well, but they're starting to move. From what I understand, they're actually starting to move back toward fake blood and blood packets, because I don't remember who the wrestler was, but he actually cut too deep and cut into an artery in his forehead, and it was incredibly dangerous. It was always incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
It is a very
Just
dangerous
that one guy
sport.
that had to mess it up for everyone else, right?
But so they are kind of starting to move toward blood packets and safer, in air quotes, ways of
ways of making it look
simulating
like
injuries.
we're bleeding. Yeah.
Yes, as
Right.
opposed to actually bleeding.
I know there was a video that surfaced last year. You guys probably did not plan on going on wrestling for this long, but there was on the
hey,
road,
I'm enjoying it. So I
on the
can't
road
complain.
on the road to
glad
WrestleMania
you're
last
here.
year, right? Triple H and Roman Reigns were fighting, and there was a video of some guy that was like ringside saw one of the producers throw a little bottle of
I do
fake
remember
blood
that,
when he
yeah.
went down to hit his head on the table. He smashed it against his head, and he was going all over the place. His nose is busted. The humanity.
Right, but before we end the show, does Undertaker win this year?
You got me in a tough spot. He's going up against apparently now Roman Reigns, who WWE fans love to hate. He's kind of become the new John Cena in that realm, that he's been stuffed down.
But they can see Roman Reigns.
just stuffed down our throats that he is the new champion and you got to love him and he's going to be on your TV winning every day. And then you have The Undertaker, like we said, everyone's childhood hero of the dead man, not the weird superhero to have. But I'm going to say yes, because if he loses, I'm going to be ticked. But my heart is telling me he's not going to win. But I think my inner child in me is saying, it's Undertaker at WrestleMania. He's got to win.
Well, it's about time to wrap up the show. Thank you, Bill, for being
Hey, thanks
here.
for having me on, guys.
Very
It was
informative.
awesome.
We'd love to have you back on the show
For sure,
sometime.
definitely.
Good luck
Figure
with
it out.
everything.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you. And a thank you to everyone who watched this morning on Bubbler Banter. And make sure to, if you haven't already liked the Brews Sports page on Facebook, to like it and invite your friends to like it as well.
That's right. You can also find us at brewsports.com, and we also will have it up on the YouTube channel. This has been Bubbler Banter on the Brews Sports Network. I'm Josh Scheibe.
And I'm Ian DeMars.
And we'll be back next week, Thursday.